is the head of all things SEND in Islington.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chrissy. I won't ask everybody to introduce themselves because I think we've got such precious time, and we don't need to take that up. And I was going to start with just a few slides. And I know we've had slide overloads this morning, but just to really kind of provoke some conversation, I guess, really, and some discussion, and kind of share a few of our thoughts and experiences in Islington, which is for those people who don't know, a very small borough in London. We're 4 miles long, 2 miles wide, but very densely populated, most densely populated borough in London. So there's lots going on here. But anyway, enough of that and enough of me. So I'm just going to quickly share just a few slides with you, as I say, to try and get us started on this. And I'm very grateful to colleagues in Bristol for their I suppose exposition, because of you know, the levels I guess of engagement, and that's kind of making that difference between the individual, the strategic, and the operational, because I think that is a really helpful way to you know, to think about this. And obviously particularly as we're looking at the strategic elements. Chrissy, are you seeing the screen?
Yep.
Yeah, lovely. Right, okay. So put in voice, let's see, slideshow, if this works from beginning, so you can see them all. So obviously that's what we're here to consider. And I think in no other industry or business would you you know, would you dare to assume to go ahead and develop your products or services without first asking your customers or service users, and in that respect, obviously, children's views must be integral to any you know, practice that we are developing, and any services that we're developing. But if you're not convinced on that, in terms of its, you know, its intrinsic merit, it's the law anyway. So we don't have much choice about it. In fact, it is the right of all children to have their say in matters that affect them, and that's laid down in the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child. I'm sure you're all familiar with that, ratified by the UK in '91. It's also set out very clearly in the Children and Families Act 2014. So we must consider the views and wishes and feelings of children and young people when we're making decisions about things that involve them. That's a statutory must. And on that basis, most of us here are going to be asked to demonstrate that we listen to children and young people, both in relation to their own individual circumstances, as we heard today, but also in terms of influencing the design and the delivery of services. And I think that's where that kind of operational and strategic level comes in. So that being the case, and that we need to do that we have to do that. Why is the voice of the child often absent in particularly in strategic planning? And I don't think there's any mystery there. I think it's because it's hard, basically. So I'm going to move on to my next slide now. So, there we go. Excellent. Thank you very much. So what are some of the challenges? And there's some things I can think of. I'm sure you all think of others. But we're not talking about an homogenous group when we talk about children. We're talking about different ages and different stages. And of course, when we're talking about children with disabilities, you're also talking about a whole range of different needs. So you know, there's the first challenge. Seeing and hearing the child. There's the physical access. I think challenge. How do you yeah, arrange for individuals or groups of children, particularly when during business hours, when we're doing most of our work. Children are in school. That's both an advantage and a disadvantage. We certainly don't want to be taking children out of school in order to help us develop services, but we do want their help. The consent, the permissions, the safeguarding, all of those. And again, as speakers have said today, the time-consuming kind of nature of this in order to do this properly. What's your method of communication? We've heard a lot about language, vocabulary, accessibility. also there's the beware the adults who speak on behalf of the child, or do they? So schools will often say, our children think, is that really what is that what they think? How do you know? And I guess all of us have the challenge in terms of the voice of the parent versus the voice of the child. What happens when those two differ? Who trumps who? When opposite views are given, and obviously interpreting what that child's or that group of children are saying, and if the answer is unclear, is it because we've not asked the right question? I just wanted to tell you a quick story really about some work that I did with some children, a group of children a few years ago, when we were thinking about co-locating a special school alongside a mainstream school in our borough, and we were getting all sorts of, I think, barriers and blocks and concerns from the adults involved in this process about the children and how the children would cope with this, how the children in the mainstream school would manage with children with additional needs, and kind of moving onto their turf or into their territory, so let's ask them was my was my first question. Anyway, long story short, we had some amazing workshops with these young people who absolutely couldn't even understand why I was asking these questions. Why would this be a problem? Why and what are you talking about here? Do you mean people who've got the same needs as Lucy, who was already in their class? Well, that would be great. That would be great if we've got more children that we can help and we can support. Again, cutting a long story short, it was the complete opposite of what we were being told. The children's concerns and anxieties and worries would be. It was actually the adults who were concerned and who were worried. And these 7 and 8 year olds ended up being the absolute drivers for change in that respect. I do often wonder is what if they'd said no, we think this is a really bad idea. Fortunately, they didn't. But it's not as easy as it looks. We know that. So we've talked about some of the challenges. Some of the enablers, however, so it's about the right approach, and that's about your culture. That's about making it meaningful to the child. It might be important to you to get the voice of the child, but actually, if it's not important to the child, then you're not going to get the engagement. How do you make it fun? Use of language we've already talked about, and I think it's the use of tools as well. So there are some techniques and some tools that you can use to facilitate obtaining views, and some of the tools that we use as grown-ups here, Slido, Jamble, things like things like that work just as well with children. And actually, again, it goes back to the making it fun aspect of this. So that's kind of important to remember as well. There's more than one way of doing these things. And then you come onto this strategic commissioning, and what the devil is strategic commissioning? That's in itself, it's a complex concept. I think strategic commissioning that the adults get caught up on. So how do you make this accessible to children and young people? And I think it's about how you break that down. So first it's how you involve children, but then how you involve them in this particular sphere of our work. And I think at its simplest, and it is absolutely about keeping it simple in my view. What is strategic commissioning about? Well, it's about identification, and it's about your needs assessment. It's about your intent. What is your plan? What is your strategy? And then it's about your implementation, your delivery plan. So you're getting into the operational again here. And then it's about the impact. And that's often the hardest. And again, kudos to our Rochdale colleagues for setting out their model in terms of impact, which is very much in terms of what are the outcomes, the outcome-based accountability model. I think is so helpful in this context. And this actually for us as professionals is very often the hardest things to evidence, isn't it? Impact. So in fact, children and young people can be huge allies in this respect. What are the opportunities? Finally, so obviously you've got individual reviews, you've got conversations, you've got interviews at an individual level, at group level. School councils. I speak obviously from an education perspective. We have got school councils, there's community activities, youth councils, health user groups, etc., etc., etc. And we've got a fantastic youth council in Islington. I just wanted to finish this little kind of bit of the presentation by talking about Liberty here, who's one of our young people with SEND. Liberty has Prader-Willi syndrome, which is for those of you who may or may not be familiar, and I'm stress that Liberty's very happy for me to share this this information. In fact, insisted that I share this information, which is you're hungry all the time. Basically, it's one of the symptoms of Prader-Willi, as well as associated learning difficulties. I can't think of anything more miserable, and yet we see young children, and as they become adults, managing these situations. Liberty was a winner in our youth council elections last November. She campaigned on animal rights and healthy eating, as you can see there, both things important to to her life, but also the need for young people to have a voice. Young people with disabilities specifically. She was inspired by Jeremy Corbyn, who's one of our local residents. You may have heard of him, who she saw going out and door knocking and campaigning, and that's exactly what she did as part of her campaign. Jeremy sent her a personal message supporting her manifesto, which she developed with the support of her children. But the thing that Liberty said to her mum when we do this as a proper election, the winners are announced by our chief executive in the town hall after the votes have been counted. It's all very exciting stuff. The first thing she said to her mum is, "It's official. I've got a voice." And I think that's so so moving, really, from a young 17-year-old who's overcome so many obstacles and disadvantages. So the point of that story is it's so important to the young people to feel that they have a voice, that they can be listened to, and they can contribute to the development of the of their services. So that was just by way of a kind of introduction, really, and a kind of to try and help us to focus on what are some of the obstacles, what are some of the challenges, how you can overcome them, and to really share some stories about what has worked and what hasn't. So I'm going to kind of open this now, and Daphne, I don't know if we're okay to raise hands. We probably still can't do that, can we? So perhaps people will. Yeah, is that okay? So
you can.
Fantastic. So if people
feel free to raise your hands, unmute. You can use the chat. I'll help with the
lovely. Thank
with
you.
monitoring the chat.
That will be great. So to hear from other people really about their experiences and their challenges, I guess on that, and any inspiration. I can see Sue's got her hand up straight away from Medway.
Thought I'd start the conversation going. Daphne knows me very well, so I'm very good at starting a conversation. So I'm just wondering how the interface with your youth council and some of your ICB colleagues, so Integrated Care Board, how are you hearing the voice across the system and at that strategic level? And we've got some ideas in Kent and Medway how we might do that. So I wanted to get your views and see if anybody else on the call has thought about that.
That's a really helpful question. So I'll just answer. I'll answer it in terms of for Islington. So one of their councillors is also on the so we've got a young people's user group, which the ICB kind of had separate. We've got groups all over the place, and that's one of our challenges. I think really, it's how you coordinate,
how you put them together. Yes, that's our challenge
and
too,
I think
because we've got a large geographical area with 750,000 kids in our area.
We've
So
got a tiny geographical area and we can't manage it, so I don't know how the devil you can
I know.
do it across a bigger area.
it is
So
a massive
how
challenge.
we've tried to do it, I think, is through the youth council, get representatives from most of the constituent groups. So we've got mainstream schools, we've got special schools, we've got health users, we've got a group of a mental health user group. So you've got the different representatives. But I think always it's a challenge, isn't it? And this is with adults as well as children. How you gain those views and represent represent collective views. I suppose really inevitably people will end up talking about their own experiences, and I think that's even more challenging for young people. We do have a facilitator who is full-time employed in order to support those young people to pull that. To try and help them to both gather and I suppose collate and assimilate and
represent the information.
Yeah, absolutely. But
okay.
it's hard. It is hard. I agree. So in short, that youth council tries to bring together those representatives. So all the nominees are nominated by. So Liberty was nominated by her. By the group of special schools as one of the candidates, and then they're voted for. So that's how we're trying to do it. But I agree, it's a challenge.
Yeah, I was just wondering if anyone else on the group have thought about, because our ICB are thinking about doing a shadow board for children, young people. So we're thinking about having one of those that feed directly into the ICB board, so that we've got a real hearing the voice of children, young people at that real strategic level, because I think we do it better more at our sort of level, which is not quite operational but not quite ICB board level, like exec level. So I was just wondering if anybody else was thinking about doing anything like that.
Interesting. And do you think be your SEND partnership board, or is it already constituted as that our green paper, or have you not thought about
the
that?
the ICB are sit on and are partners of the SEND, what we're calling improvement, because we've not got to the partnership level because we've still got unwritten statement of action, but so our improvement assurance SEND board, if you like.
Okay.
Yeah,
so that's a really interesting
and
idea.
interestingly, in Medway we have children sitting on our SEND partnership board. They actually come to those meetings as part of that partnership working, but they don't in Kent. So it's an interesting dynamic how we're doing things differently across our area.
That's complicated. Absolutely. I can't see, someone's got their hand up there. Daphne. Claire.
Yeah, thanks, Candice. I was just going to say, so we in Lancashire, we're looking at how our young people interact with our SEND partnership board, because we similarly have a young person that comes to the meeting and is supported to come to the meeting and elected by our SEND forum, that they're the person that does that. But we're also looking at kind of having, at the minute those meetings are still online as well, so because they're such big partnership meetings, we're talking about how we maybe have some face-to-face engagement, because we think the young people would prefer that to some extent, and we can have events perhaps that involve more young people, so that we can have a wider representation of different young people and children with different needs. So we're just going through a bit of a review of that at the moment with our SEND council, which is called Power in Lancashire, and how we actually interact, so that the young people can have hopefully more face-to-face engagement with our partnership board members, which includes our health colleagues, just to kind of strengthen that relationship and strengthen the quality of the conversations that they have and how young people are involved in that. Because I think sometimes the partnership board meetings are densely packed meetings. They're so busy, and I go as a professional, and even though I'm in kind of strategic engagement, so much of it is
Don't
really
you?
difficult to understand. So I think the more we can try and understand from young people, what do those meetings need to look like, how much of it do you want to come to, where do you sit on the agenda, how are things explained. I think there's a lot of work for us to do on that.
So can I just ask, and just for you, Claire, and Sue as well, with some of the practicalities of that as well, in terms of what time are the meetings, how is the material made accessible? I suppose does someone.
Yeah, we have to do the midway meetings between 4 and 6.
Right.
Because
is that in order to include your young
include the young people?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Because you can't do it within
school time.
college time, but they're young
adults,
young people, not children, but yeah.
Okay.
Differently, we've just started changing that, because the young people that come to the SEND partnership we've got support from their school, that our youth workers that support them will go into school and be on the call with them, sort of together in the room, so the young person isn't by themselves. But we do that in school time, because after school they would be they might have school transport arranged, or that they'd be travelling home. So actually, even though we have talked about that, moving it later in the day for young people's being able to attend, but actually for them it's more effective if they can be at school and be supported when they're there, and have support to come out of a class. But it's not ideal, but it's just the kind of compromise that we
had to be led by them, so that's what they wanted. So if your area is different, that's listening to their voice, isn't it? And knowing what their needs are. But I do think it is a difficult interface when you're that strategic meeting and you've got young people, and how they how you're representing information
it's
in the
about
first
the meaningfulness
instance
of the engagement, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That word was used in one of the presentations, and it is that meaningfulness. It's really hard, I think, to avoid the kind of yes, we've got a young person here, so kind of tick, job done, even though 9/10 of it might be going straight over their head. So it's that accessibility, isn't it? And that's
but they do come up with the most amazing challenges, which is great.
Oh, look, absolutely. Have you got any examples, Sue? Putting you on the spot, or anybody?
I can't actually.
Got any
I know we were having a particular problem with transport, so we had a bit of a deep dive into all of and of course the lead was going on and on about what their data was and things like that, and basically they were just really challenging them in saying, well, you might have said all of this, but actually this is what's going on in practice and out on the ground. So the board needs to know that you might be doing all this, but it's not making an impact for us. And so that then becomes a very powerful way to really, change practice. Like you were saying earlier with your special school example.
Yeah, absolutely.
That gives you the power, if you like, to
absolutely. I'm sure nobody on this in this workshop doubts the value of the input, but it's just that it is hard. It's all those practical barriers. And does anybody think they feel like they've got some good practice that they'd like to share from their own experience, or things that you've tried and have not worked so well? Can't see if anyone's got their hand up other than the ones I can see. Daphne.
No, I can't see any hands.
Oh, it looks like everybody's come for inspiration in that case. So that's
we do have comments in the chat.
Oh, that's helpful. So Louise was let's have a look at the chat. What was Louise saying there?
So she's saying corporate parenting boards include children, young people, and they do this well. I worry sometimes when we say what bits could they come to. Surely we should be changing practice so it is all understood by children, young people, families, staff with additional needs, etc.
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Louise. And I do often think this, and I think when we're producing material for our local offer, for example, and I think, okay, how can I make sure this is accessible? And I think, why do I take a different approach to this than as you've just mentioned there? I was just taking the words out of my mouth, Louise. Our lead members can't always follow. So some of our more probably unnecessarily complicated proposals. So it is about disciplining ourselves, isn't it? If it's accessible, it's accessible. If a 5-year-old could read it, then probably an elected member could also give it a go as well. But I think there is something about our communication probably generally that we could all benefit from in terms of making making it as uncomplicated as we can, rather than what's the old adage? Sorry, this is such a long report. I didn't have time to write the short one. And I think there's an element of that in all of our we could all probably learn from. Someone has got their hand up somewhere.
Yes, thanks, Louise.
It's me, Louise. Sorry, I couldn't get off mute before. My Teams is playing up.
Louise.
Yeah, I'm not saying we do it perfect, but it's a real bugbear of mine where we have this kind of cultural kind of existence where we think we have to make things differently for children. And yes, you need to adapt, but you need to adapt for everybody.
Yes.
And I'm a true believer that we shouldn't have separate bits that children don't come to. If it's not understood, is it understood thoroughly by everyone in that room? And we should be adapting and trying to do a cultural shift that actually what we're doing is we're doing it in a different way to meet everybody's needs and not just because there's a child present. So yeah, it was just that was what I felt. I feel quite strongly about that sometimes we go, well, what bit of the meeting can they come to, because the rest won't mean much, and you think, well, if it doesn't mean much, we need to make it be meaningful, don't we? And that's our responsibility that I feel really about getting into, particularly around strategic commissioning. If we're not delivering that message right, then we need to stop and rethink how we're doing it, don't we, and make it right. But yeah, that was my bit, but love what I'm hearing already. Thank you very much for sharing.
Absolutely lovely. And I think the other sins that we're all responsible is the use of acronyms. And again, I'll give another little example of that. I had to chair unexpectedly and suddenly a meeting of our youth offending team, which we would call our YOT, YOT, youth offending team. And I pulled someone in again, very short notice, to take some notes for me, and hadn't taken the time to explain what a youth offending team, i.e. YOT, was. So that person took the minutes for the entire meeting, thinking that we were talking about yachts, YATCH, as a boating exercise. So could make absolutely no sense of the entire meeting whatsoever, because he was searching for the nautical bent. And it's a silly example, but I think there's that we do that absolutely automatically, all of us. We're all guilty of that, I think. So that's that's another kind of let's this is let's think about that in our communication as well.
Kay's put in the chat, it's really interesting, Kay, what you're saying about it feels like having to teach a language or a culture to the counsellors, so that young people just get the voice, but that people know how to listen. Like it's like people could be speaking French and the counsellors are all speaking English, and they don't understand it. So like you're asking them to move chairs or to engage with young people differently, or engage with young people with send it differently again, and to really understand how to listen and how to demonstrate that you're open to really wanting to learn rather than ticking a box. So maybe Kay, you can say some more about what you're thinking. Sorry, Candy.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kay. I'm a youth voice manager in Dor. Yes, it does. It's quite a challenge with just keep.
Hey, we are having trouble hearing you. I don't know if it's just me.
That's why.
Yes.
There we go.
I was just kicked back listening to you all. Yeah, I think I just keep on at them.
Yeah. But it's a training need, isn't it? For some,
Yeah,
and again,
it is.
we can forget that ourselves because again, most
Yeah.
of us spend time, you know,
But they're a corporate
helping
parenting
the
board. I
children.
mean, come on.
Oh yeah, no, they should know better.
You know,
Yeah, definitely.
and it's just yeah, it's harder than it should be. And you know, I'm really keen to get them into the spaces where young people are, rather than always expect them to come to them. That's what young people tell us as well. You know, come where we are. Don't expect us to come to these places too. And yeah, the invites are always out, and it's just it can be very rigid and stiff sometimes with those views, and it just makes it yeah, it just makes it hard. But we keep trying, and we'll keep on educating, and we'll just keep doing it differently. And you know, once you get one that does it right, you can model that onto the others and say, your colleague came and did it like this. Come on.
Venues are really interesting concept as well, because as much as you say we should absolutely meet the young people where they are. Our young people love coming to the town hall and having a meeting there. They really, no, ours isn't. Believe me, it's, but it's. I think it's the importance of that, of you know, being invited there, and
I think when we're talking about connections and relationships and building some of that trust first, you know, actually, if I then come to a meeting at the town hall and I've seen you before because you popped in to our school and you spoke to a few of us, or whatever that might be, you know, those things are really important to participation, you know, in the journey through co-production.
Definitely. I saw Nick somewhere with his
Nikki's got a hand up, Candy.
Yeah, hi there. I think probably just to reiterate what quite a lot of people are saying already, there does need to be a huge culture shift, really, and I think it can be quite tokenistic. And I know that a lot of boards, a lot of forums, adult forums will say, well, what is it that children, young people want? Well, actually, you know, they need to realise actually children, young people only know what they know. So actually, sometimes it's those decision makers, it's those stakeholders that need to say, well, this is what we can actually offer. So you know, I think there is a huge change required, and it's like, you know, everyone else is saying, really, you just have to keep digging away and just showing some really good practice. And when you have got some good practice, like we're hearing today, it's about being able to celebrate that and sharing that as well.
Absolutely, and pick that apart a little bit, isn't it? And about the components, because it is a very intricate thing. I think with the people we're being asked to do as part of a much wider role, and to do it properly does take a lot of investment. I absolutely think that. Cool. Is there anything we've missed from the chat? So
I don't think so. But if anyone, we have 5 minutes left, so if anyone wants to say anything, ask any questions, share any experiences, this is the time to do so.
Louise is typing.
Thanks, Louise. If you don't have anything to share, we can bring this to an end. You'll have an extra 4 minutes of your break. The next session, the workshop sessions, are at 10 to 1. So try to be prompt. And if you're not joining another workshop session, please fill in the evaluation form that I will pop in the chat in a second. But yeah, thanks for joining, and thanks, Candy, for this brilliant
for their contribution.
Thank you very much.
Conversation. Cheers. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye. Bye.